sometimes it is a bit of an ego thing. And there's times where we think we need to be the answer to the problem that we see out there. Whereas if we can shift it again and say, it's not about us, it's really about the mission. And this is true, by the way, if you're leading a large nonprofit organization, or if you're starting something from scratch. The key to really good, effective leadership is to quickly realize it's not about you. Right. It's
Yeah.
about the mission. And if that is your perspective, you're going to be successful anywhere you go because it's not going to be about you. So it's not going to be about ego. It's going to really be about what's best for the horses. How can we best get the most resources to take care of the majority of horses in our community that really need help? And if that's your driving force, ironically, people are drawn to that even more, right? Sometimes, and even the best of us, when we have a passion for whatever cause it is, sometimes our own ego can move in there, like you said. And sometimes people can pick up on that it's a little bit more about you getting things done rather than the mission itself. And that can be a pitfall for people. And so I think you're right. Continuing to remind yourself and have the mindset of it's about the mission. It's not about me. So whatever role I can play to accomplish that mission, that's success.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Rob, thanks so much for being here on the Touch of a Mustang podcast. You are a little bit of a different guest than the guests I typically have, not based in horses, but
Right.
but I wanted to have you on here to talk about how people who really want to do things to help horses and to help the humans that are interacting with them can effectively run their nonprofits. So maybe you can start by giving a little introduction of yourself and what you do, and then we can really dig into what makes a good, successful, and effective nonprofit.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks for having me on the show today. Honored to be here. My background real quickly, I've been a little over 30 years now in nonprofit leadership, social impact leadership, and absolutely loved it. I'm very much driven as a mission kind of driven person, a purpose driven person. And so the nonprofit world fits well with that because that's really what separates nonprofits out. Are these organizations are very mission driven. There's something that people are passionate about. They see a problem in the world perhaps, or an issue that needs to be addressed. And so they form a nonprofit, right, to address those issues and try to accomplish great things, in order to meet those needs. Yeah, so that's been my experience in the past. And so now I'm a coach and consultant. So I work with lots of different nonprofit organizations and individual leaders. So I do individual coaching, I do group coaching, but I also do consulting with organizations. Primary three areas: fundraising, strategic development, and then leadership development are the three areas. And then if people are listening, ironically, I've been doing more and more work with businesses and business leaders because I do think, even though my experience certainly has been in the social impact and nonprofit sphere, leadership is leadership at the end of the day, right? When you lead people, there's a lot of commonalities that cross over to both sectors. And so I found that to be true, and it's been really fun. Just really enjoyed it.
I wanted to have you on because I think, you are the type of person that a lot of my audience is, where they have a mission, they have something they really want to accomplish, and their, heart and soul are really dedicated to these causes. And it's sometimes difficult to figure out how to do that. And especially, I would say the money aspect can be a tricky one because I think a lot of us would be okay, like, we don't need money. Let's just all help the world be a better place. But that's not the reality we live in.
Exactly.
Let's talk some about that and what advice you would give nonprofits, either who are struggling or starting up. And let's maybe talk with the foundation. How does someone go from having this mission or this purpose, this feeling of calling that they want to do something to help the world? What are some of the best steps they can take to move from that into developing an organization that is truly moving into action and helping the areas that they want to?
I often answer that question by saying this, and it's not original with me. Actually, I had a guest on my show. He had this phrase, and I thought he was so right. Passion is not enough. And so in other words, just having passion for a project, passion for a need, something in your community, or in this case, horses specifically, the passion is great. You want the passion, no doubt about it. It's just that it's not enough by itself. So passion's a good place to start, but then you want to move towards a plan and then a process. So to me, start with the passion. If you don't have passion, it's going to be really hard to keep going. But once you have your passion, now you got to create a plan and then create a process to accomplish your plan. So those are the 3 P's, if you will. Start with passion, then go into a plan, then a process of how you're going to accomplish it. So what do? Well, I think you start with 3 key areas. Come up and develop a clear mission. What is the mission you're trying to accomplish, right? And get that articulated. There's lots of resources out there. You can hire a coach if you want. A consultant too, or talk to people that are doing it. Lots of resources online, of course, but come up with a clear mission statement and then talk about a vision. Like if everything came out and the dream came true, what is this vision? What does this vision look like for you, 1, 3, 5, 30 years down the road? And then create your values, because your values will be actually your guardrails of what you decide to do and how you want to go about developing this nonprofit organization you're wanting to start. And then that's your basis. And then you start putting together your foundational documents. You start gathering people around you to help you shape this and make sure it's really clear. What's in your mind is actually clear to other people. And so I think those are the first steps, is getting that developed. And then, of course, on the formal legal side, if you're going to start a nonprofit or a foundation even, there are some legal steps that you need to take. Creating a 501c3, for example, getting your bylaws laid down. Again, lots of resources out there you can get help with, or again, you can call a coach or somebody to help you walk through all those steps. So those things are very doable, but I think if people are listening and thinking, okay, what's my passion? Okay, I've got the passion. What's my plan? And then what's my process? Those at least start there. And then all these other things will start, rolling into place, so to speak. Now, here's the one thing I would say, going to your original question of what's going to keep this going, so it's not just an idea or a passion or a desire, but actually turns into something. Really, you have to, in this world with nonprofits, unless you have a lot of money or independently wealthy, then it's different. But for most of us, you have to develop a plan where people can financially support what you're doing, right? That's really what holds back, I'd say, most nonprofits. They have a great vision and they may even have a good plan, but if they don't have the financial support to get behind it, it doesn't last. And so that is a big piece. And a lot of people, that's intimidating. It doesn't need to be, but I think that's intimidating for people. We can unpack a little bit more about that. But coming up with a good, sustainable financial plan is, to me, really important early on. That is part of that plan. And then really, again, the process by which you actually accomplish your goals, because that's just part of it. Unless you're selling something, again, which again, nonprofits don't really sell much. It's usually, again, someone gets behind it financially to get it going. So I think that's a big piece. And so I think that's something we can talk about more.
Yeah, and let's kind of dig into the fundraising finances aspect of it right now. Do you think that part of the struggle, you said it's one of the things that stops a lot of people from maybe pursuing their purpose, is it that there aren't finances out there available for it? Or is it more that people aren't understanding how to get it and to make it sustainable?
Well, that is I think it's a little bit of both. I would say there are people out there for sure, but I think you need to find them and you need to be able to articulate a mission and a vision that's compelling to the people that really have a heart to want us to get behind you. What I often find is when you have a passion or desire and you're really excited about something, and here maybe as an example, like you say you run across a restaurant you just absolutely love and you just can't stop talking about it. You tell all your friends, you tell all your networks, you tell your community, you tell your neighborhood, I found this restaurant, you got to check it out. It's that kind of same passion that you're like, hey, I've got this idea. I really want to take care of horses. And you're really excited. You start telling everybody about it. Along the way, people are probably going to initially get behind you because they just like you and they're friends of yours. They love your passion. People are drawn to passion and this really idea. Now you have a purpose. But what I think differentiates people is really being able to articulate, here again is my plan. Here's how I'm going to really accomplish this. And then to take that to people that actually have means and the ability to support a cause. People I found that have money and really like to give to nonprofit causes and give to mission organizations, they really want to see something where there's something laid out where their investment, if they will, by the way, I think that's how people see it. It's an investment in a mission. They want their investment to have a good result, right? Because they could give their money in a lot of places. And so I think the more you can come to them, it doesn't have to be all 100% nailed down, but really a clear plan and a process by which you're going to accomplish things. Then you present that to people. And I think the confidence goes up and you're not going to just attract people that like you and kind of are friends of yours and excited about your passion, but they're actually believing that you can get this done. So I think that's the difference of how you get people on board. They're really going to have confidence that when I invest in you, it's actually going to go somewhere. And I'm going to see 2-3 years down the road, wow, you've actually got this up and going, and this is great. How else can I help? And guess what? Those people that initially supported you will come alongside and actually, I think, give another gift. And now you've got ongoing sustainability because you've kind of proven yourself, if you will. So I think people are out there, but I think it's how you approach them. So that's why I'd answer kind of both. It's having a good plan and being able to do that and articulate that well, and then you'll attract the people that you need.
What are some of the best ways to find those people, in your opinion, or from what you have seen in your work?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would say the world you're talking about is a little bit new to me, but I'm
Yeah.
guessing like every niche organization, or where there's a passion project of all types, right? There's from affordable housing to food insecurity to taking care of horses, right? There's all these great causes out there. Typically, there is a community around that cause. And
Uh-huh.
that could be online through social media. That could be through websites. That could be, there's a gathering of people in your community once a month. There's a lot of different ways, but I guarantee there's a community gather around that cause. That to me is your first step, is go to where these communities are gathering. That again, it could be online or in person, and begin to meet people and develop those relationships and can make those connections. Because then once you start developing that community, understand, because here's the other thing I found that I think is helpful, is understand that you may have a passion, do something, maybe start your own sanctuary, find out what the need is by getting in the community. Because it could be there's something else in the community that is a bigger need than maybe what you initially thought, because maybe someone else is doing boarding of the horses, but maybe you could do more education or training of people on how to take care of horses or whatever. So you may find there's a little bit more of a niche that you can meet versus just doing what you think. It may be that when you do your research, if you will, by getting in these communities and really understanding what's already being done, then you determine what's not being done. Because that's another thing I think nonprofits, maybe with their passion again, by not coming up with a clear plan and process, part of that is understanding what is a need that's not being met yet, that I think that I could probably meet with the resources I have and the passion and the purpose that I have. What is that area that no one else right now is meeting in my community? Maybe that's where you start. And so I think the best way is just to connect, do research, meet people, ask as many questions as possible. And then the second piece of that is you start asking people that have already done this successfully. Go call a bunch of people, set up meetings. If they're in your area, take them out to coffee or have lunch and say, tell me all about how you got this going. How did you scale it? How did you grow it? How have you made it sustainable? Become a learner and get as much information as you can. That's going to help you avoid, common mistakes. It'll help you avoid duplicating services. So I think that's the next step I would take as well.
What are some of the mistakes that you see being made as far as funding and sustainability for nonprofits, and things that people are maybe doing that are the barriers that are causing their nonprofits to fail because of the financial aspect of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think probably there's a lot, but I think it falls into two categories. I think number one, kind of building off what I just mentioned, they provide something that is maybe a duplication of services. So as much as you may have a lot of passion, and maybe more passion than the person down the street, once donors get behind it, they may give you an initial amount of money. But then once they realize, oh, wait, well, this group over here is doing the same thing you're doing. Did you not do your research is what they think. They may not tell you that. So I think do your research, make sure you know exactly why you are really called to do this and why should it be you at this moment in this community to provide this service. So once you've really wrestled that down and have a clear answer, that really is going to help you not bump into that in the future. Because again, I see a lot of people, there's so much excitement and passion. People just get behind it because of that simple passion, but they won't stay behind it. They won't sustainably get behind it over time. And then secondly, I think what often people that have this passion, they're entrepreneurial and they want to get this nonprofit going, they don't think through long-term. Coaching clients, I encourage people to think at least 3 years in advance, if not 5 years, and sometimes more even. The reason being is it takes a while. You have to realize it's not going to be a flip of the switch and you're going to get all these people coming out of the woodwork to support you. It's going to take a lot of work. And the analogy I often use is you think about a rocket and how much power it takes to get, say, a space rocket, if you will, off the launch pad. There's a tremendous amount of energy to get that just off the launch pad, right? Once it's in the air, there's actually less energy, and you just kind of slightly, you have to adjust and you have to, move it slightly, but it's typically already built in. It's really the energy is getting it off the launch pad. And so the analogy would be there is a tremendous amount of energy getting a nonprofit off the ground, but it's going to take longer than you think. So have at least a 3-year plan. And then once you get this off up and going and you do have a sustainable plan, you'll find that you're like, wow, it's not as hard now that you've been in it 3 years as it was at the beginning. And so I think underestimating how difficult it is often where people fail and they just give up. They're like, this is too hard, or they didn't think through how they're going to sustain this. One other maybe example to be helpful. I've been coaching, actually I'm coaching someone right now, and he really had this passion for developing a program to reach kids that are just stuck either in the foster system or they've just had a really difficult family of origin experience, and that's impacting their education. It's impacting their behavior. They've been in and out of juvie. So he's really focused on early elementary and junior high kids, even into high school. But he was a teacher at the time. So he just said, okay, I'm going to start this and see where it goes. But he kept his day job, if you will. And so then he reached out to me. He wanted a coach to help get this going. And it was really good to walk through, how do we develop a plan where you can keep growing this nonprofit, but stay where you are, but keep finding the opportunities where you have more freedom. And then you have to really look at your time very carefully so that in a sense, your free time for a period of time, all your free time is going to be focused on getting this nonprofit up and going. Because going back to the analogy, it's going to take a lot of energy to get this going. Well, we've been meeting for over 3 years now. And he finally, this past fall, he was able to go full time with this nonprofit. And he's still now kind of help consult as a teacher, but he made that transition and now it's starting to take off. And it's actually really exciting now because people are seeing this. They're seeing more traction. They're seeing he has a plan. He's stuck with it, so there you go. That's an example of, I think, being realistic and wise of how long it's going to take and how much work it's going to take.
Yeah, that is great. That is a big leap to make it from personally funding it to being able to make it into an organization that's funding itself. That's awesome. It seems like a lot of times there would be a lot of energy and hype right when something starts up, and then that might fade and you get into the tedium of the everyday work and challenges and struggles before it maybe becomes something that is well known, widespread, more sustainable. What advice do you have for the people that maybe get into that space where it's after the excitement's worn off? Maybe your friends aren't donating anymore because they can't afford to donate every time,
Yes.
all those types of things. What advice do you have to kind of get through that patch where it's probably a bit of building more than anything else?
Yeah, that is a great question. It does happen all the time. So I would say a couple of things. Number one, surround yourself with 1 or 2 people, maybe a group, even better, of those who just believe in you regardless and just to support you. So you need some support. So get that support around you to encourage you when you just don't even believe in yourself almost, or you're really doubting yourself. Having people around you to say, no, you can do this. I remember that passion you had. Now, if you've done this for a period of time, so I will say this, say you've been at it for 5 years, and I'm thinking, so longer than the kind of the typical launch time, and you still haven't moved the needle, so to speak, and you've kind of asked all your friends, you've asked all those people that you had who would maybe get behind it. There could be a time where you have to kind of analyze maybe what vision and passion that I have. Maybe this is not the right path, but you still have a passion and vision. So it may be a time to recalibrate and reframe. How can I accomplish what I really want to do? But maybe it's not the direction I thought initially I was going to make the impact. So in other words, maybe your job is not maybe to start something from scratch where you're the CEO and executive director, but maybe your job is to do more advocacy or again, more education and training. And maybe it's to join somebody else who's already got something going. And so maybe that's part of it, is that you can bring your expertise. It's the same passion, and the end goal, if again, you're trying to take care of horses and rehabilitate them or provide, equine therapy or whatever it is, maybe you actually can even do better by joining somebody else who has other skills or they already have an established foundation. Because I have found that too. Sometimes people have the passion, but maybe they don't have either the training experience or time. They just don't have the time, or potentially the gifting to really be that CEO, to get it off the ground, that starter, that entrepreneur. But they have a clear passion to do something. But if they work with somebody else and actually maybe join somebody else, they actually find that is a better fit and they just thrive. Here's one thing. It's not exactly what you're getting to, but I think it's related. I've had a lot of people on my show, the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast, that are talking about mergers of nonprofits. It happens in the business world all the time, but for whatever reason in the nonprofit world, I think there's a fear that if I merge or if I join somebody else, I failed or something, or the organization I failed. It just didn't quite work. I don't think that's the case. I think sometimes just you hit a reality check where if you really want to accomplish your overall goal, it just could be that having two people come together and sharing resources is going to be more effective in the long run so that your goal is actually accomplished. Just means your role may be different to accomplish that same goal. And so being open to that, I think, is something that could be really helpful, because certainly there's no shame in merging. In fact, to do it all the time, and more nonprofits are doing it. Ironically, after COVID, when a lot of people just lost their funding or people just couldn't fund like they used to. And now, of course, this past year, we've seen a lot of federal cuts with a lot of larger nonprofits, right? And they've really struggled to manage, basically the funding gap that they just couldn't make up. And so people are considering merging all the time, because at the end of the day, right, the goal and the mission typically for people is bigger than just your role in it, right? And I think overcoming, maybe you don't have to be at the center of it, but if your goal really is to take care of horses, you can still accomplish that in a lot of different ways. And so I think that may be another thing where if you have that sense, you've been at it for 5 years, you've done everything you possibly could, and it just hasn't worked out. Don't give up altogether and just get discouraged. Again, if you're passionate about horses, find another way to get involved and just maybe a different role.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's something we don't necessarily talk about a lot. Not everybody has to be the founder of a nonprofit
That's right.
and can still be a leader within the community,
That's
helping
exactly
to
right.
achieve their purposes. So let's kind of move over to that. Let's talk a little bit about mindset. I think the ego can kind of get involved, and like you talked about,
So true.
if I do this, I'm failing. And we kind of are losing sight of the mission that we started with, whatever that might be. And instead, kind of get in those headspaces of self-doubt and questioning ourselves and what we're doing. And maybe we should just go back to our day job and forget about this thing that we feel like is important. So talk more about that, about the mindset, about how we can really find our place in the nonprofit world and make sure that our mind is helping us instead of hindering us.
Oh, that's a good question. And I think, yeah, you said it well. I think sometimes it is a bit of an ego thing, and I can fall prey to it for sure. I think there's times where we think we need to be the answer to the problem that we see out there. And in this case, we're taking care of horses. Whereas if we could shift it again and say, it's not about us, it's really about the mission. And this is true, by the way, if you're leading a large nonprofit organization or if you're starting something from scratch. I think a key to really good, effective leadership is to quickly realize it's not about you. Right.
Yeah.
It's about the mission. And if that is your perspective, you're going to be successful anywhere you go, because it's not going to be about you. So it's not going to be about ego. It's going to really be about what's best for the horses in this case, right? How can we best get the most resources to take care of the majority of horses in our community that really need help? And if that's your driving force, honestly, people are drawn to that even more, right? Sometimes, and even the best of us, when we have a passion for whatever cause it is, sometimes our own ego can and move in there, like you said, and sometimes maybe people can pick up on that it's a little bit more about you getting things done rather than the mission itself, and that can be a pitfall for people. And so I think you're right, continuing to remind yourself and have the mindset of it's about the mission, it's not about me. So whatever role I can play to accomplish that mission, that's success. And if it happens to be you're the founder and CEO, great. If it happens to be you're the support role or marketing person, you're the program director, great. Because at the end of the day, it's the mission that gets accomplished, whatever role you may play.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people to try and establish what maybe their best role would be within a nonprofit or whatever passion that they might have?
Yeah, that's a great, yes. Two ways I would say that is, you've probably heard this phrase before. The best predictor of future success is past success. So look back, what have you done up to this point? And not that nonprofit, for profit, but like what skill sets have you been really good at? This could go all the way back when you're in high school and college even. Like, what were you always good at? What was something that brought you success? What came easily to you? You'll often figure out your strengths pretty quickly based on that. And my guess is you have a track record, even if it's applied to different jobs or different settings, you'll have a skill set and something would be considered a strength that carries through your whole life. So build on that. How can you apply that now to this mission of taking care of horses? What are those strengths and skill sets that you've done in the past that have been really successful and people tend to respond to? Well, then keep doing more of that. So that's number one, look at the past. And then number two, I think you start looking at, I do this with my coaching clients all the time. And you can think of it like 4 quadrants, and it's split into what are your strengths and where do you get energized? So in other words, and if you think of a quadrant, top right quadrant would be things you're both good at and really give you energy. And then the bottom left quadrant would be, what are those things you're not very good at and really de-energize you, but you end up doing it anyway, right? Or what are those things you're good at, but it de-energizes you? Or maybe there's things that are actually you're not so good at, but you're energized by them. So you still kind of keep doing that, but you're maybe not the most effective to do it. So I think finding where are you in those 4 quadrants, I found helping you find what that role is, you need to have, I typically tell my clients again, over 50% of your time should be in that top right quadrant where you're good at something and you get energized by it. That goes back to sustainability too. If you're constantly drained by something and you're pushed into a situation where you just walk away and you're just worn out, and people pick up on that after, over time. But we're at the flip side, if you keep doing something and other people are like, I don't know how you keep doing that. I don't know how you still have passion and excitement. Well, you get energized by it. And by the way, you're really good at it. That combination is tough to beat. People follow that. People are attracted to that. And I think that will give you some clues as to where you should land in a position of a nonprofit organization or wherever you actually, that could be any position you're in, is think about your strengths and your passion and your strengths and your energy. Where do you get energized? Because that over time is where I see people preventing burnout, really leaning into that top right quadrant.
Have you ever had clients, or do you have advice for people who maybe can't see their own strengths?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. Very much. I would say that's where you ask people close around you. If you're on a team now, ask your supervisor, ask your team for honest feedback and advice. Like, tell me, where do you see my strengths? So I think by being really open to other people, hopefully people that trust you and love you and will give you good advice, but honest advice too, or honest feedback, that is so important. Yeah, because we can always be blind sometimes to both our weaknesses, but also our strengths, and not even see our strengths. And it's funny you say that, because I found that where sometimes something comes so easily to you, you don't even see it as a strength. Isn't everybody like this? You're like, no, this is a strength of yours because you don't even think about it. You just do it. And that's often a sign that's a strength of yours, is when it's just automatic almost, right? But sometimes people need to be able to tell that to you and reflect that back to you and say, you're really good at this because I would never have figured this out. Like, you just seem to be born to do this, or you just seem to be so natural at this. When you hear those kinds of comments, that's often a signal that that is one of your strengths. So getting people's feedback and advice to me is the best way.
Awesome. Yeah, that is good advice, because I think you're right. A lot of us don't realize the things that come easy to us. So
Yeah.
that is great
Yeah.
advice. Have you seen, this is something that I have seen in the horse world, where there is conflict amongst nonprofits almost, and I think it could probably go back to the ego,
Yeah.
where nonprofits are not helping each other. They're maybe competing more than helping. And what advice do you have in that situation for how a leader could handle something like that?
Oh, it's so true. It does happen a lot, sadly. There is a lot of competition,
It's
sometimes more
sad.
than you realize. It's sad. It totally is, because I'm a big abundance mentality person, where I do think there's more than people think. But at the same time, I think there's also wisdom in not duplicating services, right? And certainly when it comes to competition. And so my advice, in fact, I did this with the most recent nonprofit organization that I led before I, moved into being a consultant and coach. I just made a decision. You're in a particular area where there's like over 200 nonprofits in a pretty small area of population. There is a lot of money, though, in this community where there's a lot of people that want to give. So there was certainly resources there. But again, there was, I would say, there was potential. You could certainly see it through a competition lens and say, well, I'm not going to help them, or I'm not going to, what if they support, this organization? They may not support our organization if they support this person. And anyway, easily you could, kind of get into competition if you really were wired that way. And so I just decided to say, let's work together. I made a point to reach out to every executive director when I first moved into the community, and just to, number one, to build a friendship and say, how can I support you? And then how can we support each other? And also just understand, what do you do? So I think breaking down the barriers, being the first to initiate and reach out to people in your community. particularly those who are doing maybe similar work with horse work, is just extend a hand of friendship. That right there will bring down some of the barriers or potential, even if you don't have even an idea of or a desire to be competitive, they may think that. And so by reaching out and being friendly, I think that'll help. And number two, by offering to help, like legitimately saying, hey, is there anything we could do together? How can we collaborate? And so it goes back to what you said earlier. Yeah, it's about the ego thing of, if you come to another, say someone who leads another horse orientated nonprofit organization, maybe a horse sanctuary or whatever, and say, hey, my goal, I think our goals are very similar and we may go about it differently, but how could we have it even a bigger impact and reach more people that want to take care of horses if we were to collaborate together? And I'm not talking a merger. Now that could be too, but I'm just saying collaboration is big. It could be a joint fundraising event. It could be a joint community event, could be a joint education event. That to me will just dispel some of that. If there was a competition or a competitive spirit or this even antagonistic, that's the worst case, of course. You're at least trying to overcome that by setting the example yourself and just choosing on your own to reach out and build those friendships, build that community. So I think that's the best you can do. And if it's not if like people don't take you up on the offer to have lunch or coffee or whatever, or if they don't want to collaborate, you can't force it, right? But I think you can at least have that spirit and that mindset of, hey, I'm going to collaborate as much as I can with anybody who wants to. I'm in. How can we do that? How can we really support each other? And I found when you do that, for the most part, that comes back to you. In other words, people most of the time respond to it. And the whole mission of taking care of horses, actually, it's like everyone starts coming together. And you, by doing that, you actually, I've seen it anyway, where people kind of get, oh yeah, this is better. Let's do this together. We're reaching more people. I think over time, by just proving it by your own example, it does pay off.
That is great advice. It is really good just to open that conversation sometimes, can realize there's a human on the other side who just has the same goals. So, but like you said, doesn't always happen. That shouldn't necessarily
No.
change the way you approach it. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, we've talked a little bit about fundraising. Money is obviously kind of a foundation of a successful nonprofit. We've talked a little bit about community. Are there other foundational things that should be in place or you need to have in place to have a successful nonprofit?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think all those things are good. On top of maybe what we haven't chat about too much, and I do think it's important. I think sometimes it's overplayed, but it is very important. So I at least want to say it. We live in a digital world. We live in a world where people, they don't knock on your front door literally like a business, right, or a nonprofit in this case. They go online first to see that's your front door, essentially, to people, right? So I think you have to have at least the basics of a good presence online of whatever cause, whatever nonprofit you have. Also with social media, it's just I'd see it as a place where people can engage with you before they ever see you in person or go to an event or potentially, write a check or get their credit card out and support you. So develop at least a good website that is up to date. You can keep it simple. There's so many great resources out there. Again, now it's not super expensive to have at least a decent site. And then with social media, I typically encourage people, have a plan. So come up with a plan that's realistic. So in other words, maybe you start and you're just brand new and you're getting all these things going. You're getting your bylaws going. You're getting your 501c3 approved by the state. All these things you need to get done. Maybe you just say, I'm going to post once a week. That's your plan. Great. Stick with that. So don't stress yourself out too much, but have a plan and stick to it. I found that with websites, number one of the worst killers is if it's totally out of date. If you have something that happened 6 months ago, that just sends the message, someone's not minding the store here, So, and particularly with the younger generations and Gen Z coming up, if you want to get them involved, that is their world. And so in fact, that's what I'd recommend. If you're starting something and that's not your strength, get somebody else who's a younger generation that can just do it for you because they love it. It's second nature to them and they'll keep it up and they'll make sure it's up to date and fresh and, positive. So yeah, so that's what I would say is make sure you have something that's at least out there. It's updated, come up with a plan that's doable for you. And then the last piece of that, every nonprofit needs to tell good stories, right? That's, I think, one of the basis of drawing people to your nonprofit, drawing people to give to you. You tell good stories, you learn about that. And I know people that are passionate about this world, taking care of horses, I guarantee everyone has multiple stories.
Yeah.
So just come up with a way. And nowadays, I think the nice thing about social media and websites and through video, you can do it pretty casually. Like I've found more and more, like I'm amazed. It used to be even like, I'd say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, certainly, it felt like you had to have these professional videos. They had to be really well done and super
Yeah.
polished. But I think with social media now, literally people are in their car and just doing a quick video, right? Or they're
Yeah.
walking outside and they're doing a
That's
video
a
as they're
couple of big
walking.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's much more like I think people value authenticity and being real over being a polished video that looks amazing, right? Almost that is drawing more people to your website when they're authentic videos. And certainly it's just someone talking to them, you're going to get more views. And so everyone can do that. That's the beauty of that, I think, is everyone can pretty much do that. So think about, but be intentional. What is the story you're trying to tell? And be authentic about it. And then thirdly, again, just get somebody who's really good at to help you. And I'd say typical younger generation member is of your staff or your volunteer group, whatever. They're going to help you do that.
Great asset. Yeah, for sure. What advice do you have for someone who has maybe started a nonprofit and gotten in over their head? Maybe they went too fast, too quickly. They have more expenses than they have funds for. What advice do you have for that person?
Oh yeah, that's it. And that's obviously a really difficult scenario. So number one, I think the key is transparency. Just be totally honest and open. It's super difficult and you have to eat humble pie, as they say. But it's so much better just to say, I tried, I'm behind, I ran out of money. I think people are much more quick to forgive you and come alongside you and even support you if you're honest and transparent. I think the worst thing you can do is try to hide it and say, okay, I'll wait till I raise more money or I'll wait till I get things figured out. And then all of a sudden you never do. And then people realize you're aware of this for a long time and you didn't tell us. I think most people just say, tell us, just be honest, be totally transparent and honest about where you are. That is the best policy. And I think you'll be surprised. People can be forgiving, but I think they'll be less forgiving if you try to hide it, cover it up, or certainly if you're really intentionally covering it up and lying to people, like that's the worst case, of course, then it's really difficult to build trust back. But I think if you're honest and just say, this is what happened, and you'll actually probably, people will be, question a little bit like your strategy and, they'll question, why did you do this? But they probably won't question your character. If you're honest, you ask for forgiveness, you're sorry and say, I need help. That's the other thing. Say, I need help. Is there anybody who can help me out? Reach out to people for sure. But transparency, honesty is the best policy, so to speak. And I think in this case, you potentially can get people that will support you still, even if you have gotten in over your head. So there you go. That'd be my advice for
Yeah,
folks.
I think that's scary to do, but like you say, it's a better scenario than trying to figure it out yourself. And if you never can, that's a hard one to face.
It is.
Let's talk a little bit more about leadership. What makes a good leader in the nonprofit sector and just overall in whatever you might be doing? What are some of those important skills to have as a leader that you've seen?
Yeah. Okay. Good leadership skills. We've kind of talked about a few of them. I think honesty, by the way, honesty and transparency is one of the best. Just always being that way as a leader. I think that's how you lead. Passion, we've talked about. I think having passion as a leader is really important. People are drawn again to passion. I think a couple of the pieces maybe we haven't talked about as much is communication. That's so important. Number one, communicating as much as you can about who you are, your story, your passion, your mission. Why do you do this? And then being clear with your communication and getting maybe even in some training that doesn't come naturally to you. I think communicating to your supporters, to your team, to the volunteers you have, boy, you just need to get good at communication because that is really important. I've found leaders often think, oh, they'll know what's going on, or I already told them that a month ago, or I already said that in one of my emails. Like never assume people get everything you say the first time you say it. So vision leaks often. You've heard that phrase maybe. And so in other words, it's almost like an empty bucket where you got to always be filling it up. And I do think with communication, you're constantly, speaking and communicating your mission and vision right at the time you're probably getting tired of saying the mission and vision about what you're about. That's just about the time some people were like, oh, I finally get it. I see what you're doing. I found that to be true. And so, cause you're in it all the time, you're living in it. It's like you're a fish in this fishbowl and you're swimming it all the time. Well, people are just jumping in for the first time and finally getting what you're all about. So never stop communicating. I think that's a big piece. And then I think as a leader, again, it goes back to transparency and authenticity. I think one of your keys is going to be building trust. And how do you build trust? You're honest, you're open, you're communicating to them. You're always open to feedback. I think that's a good thing. If people know that you're open to feedback, not that you do everything people tell you, it's just that you're open to their feedback and you do the best you can to apply their feedback to you, particularly if it's negative feedback, how you can improve things. That to me over time builds trust. And then the last piece would be, there's more, but I just, for time's sake, relational intelligence. I have found that as one of the demarkers that really separate good leaders from average leaders are those who really develop that relational intelligence, connecting with people, listening, really understanding what are people saying to you? How are you communicating back to others? And so really learning that. And now that may not come naturally to some. So there's books out there, there's resources, you can get a coach. There's other things you can do to help improve your relational intelligence. But I particularly found in the nonprofit world, because so much of it is communicating a mission, right? Getting people excited about something, raising money for that. Those all take skills where you need to understand how you're relating to people, right? And so I think that relational intelligence is so important for a leader. If you really want to grow, build a team, lead that team, sustain that team, and sustain that mission, relational intelligence is one of those key pieces, I think.
Do you have any advice for if the passion seems to run up? You were passionate about it and now it's gone.
Okay, yeah, passion's
It's
gone.
not feeling it.
Yes. Oh, that does happen, by the way. Yeah, and I think there's high burnout potential for all nonprofit leaders. I've definitely been burned out in the past. You get this thing called compassion fatigue. Heard that term, and certainly with if you're in the humanitarian world and you're serving people constantly, but it really is nonprofits have a tendency to have people that are really passionate and they give and give and give and give, and then they just have nothing left, right? So that is a real thing. So I would go back to that quadrant. Where are your strengths and where do you get energized? And as much as you can, start eliminating or delegating or hiring out those things that de-energize you or that you're not good at. That's going to be one of your best ways is to, number one, be aware that you could burn out and be aware that you will probably lose energy and passion and steam over time. So that's one thing proactively you can do. And then the second proactive thing you can do is what is your schedule somehow. And I would say it's at least every 6 months, if not certainly every year, is pull back a little bit. Some people do like day retreats or they even, on their vacation or just take some time away from the busyness of whatever nonprofit you're leading and just spend time reflecting again, why are you in this? And ask the tough question, like, what got you into this? What's first got you passionate about this project of taking care of horses? And sometimes just by stopping, getting away from the craziness of fighting fires all the time and always running things all the time, pulling back and reflecting and thinking about that question can maybe reconnect you with the original purpose that really got you going in the first place, right? So maybe it was you had a situation where you had a horse growing up as a kid and something happened with that horse and you couldn't take care of it or whatever. I don't know what would be the cause for you to get excited about why you started this nonprofit in the first place, but try to get connected again with that and do everything you can to fan that passion back into, a full blown excitement again. And so I think if you're managing your energy and you're managing those areas that are sucking the life out of you. And if you're reminding yourself of what got you into it in the first place and continuing to put yourself in a position that gets you fired up, that's going to help. And then the last thing would be, it goes back to that whole thing of connecting with other people that do this. Not only do you want to collaborate with them and, make sure you're there as a support, but being in a community of other people that are passionate, that can help because there may be times where you are running low on your passion, but someone else is running high and they're so excited and they're so fired up about what they're doing and they're so excited to see what they're accomplishing. And maybe it's in even a different state or a different region of where you're doing your nonprofit, but just being around somebody can reignite that passion again for you. And then you and by being in community, you may be in a place where you're really passionate and there's somebody else in your community that needs your passion and your support. So by doing that, you're getting people around you to support you. So I think those three things would probably at least help. But you're right. That's a real thing. Just know that's a hazard of being in the nonprofit world is burnout is real and you can lose your passion.
Any other advice to avoid the burnout, things you can do along the way so that you don't reach that point where it maybe is at a crisis?
Yeah, I think I find that you typically, particularly when you're starting something, you end up taking on too much. Your expectations for yourself are too high and you just take on everything. And that's a real mistake. So it does go back to that quadrants again. you take on things that really aren't best for you to take on, and you do things that really just sort of sucking the life out of you. And if you do that too long, that's when you start really getting to burnout. So how do you get around that? By building that team around you specifically and being willing to delegate. I have found too, like some people that are starters and founders and executive directors, they have such a passion and they often have a really high standard of what they're trying to accomplish. They don't trust other people to have that same standard, or they don't trust people are going to work as hard as they're going to work. And so they don't delegate. They don't give other things to them. And what I found is even if you say you're at 100% and you think everybody else is at 75%, but you delegating something to a person who's even at 75% is better than you holding on to everything at 100% in your mind and then burning out. And then it goes to zero. Like there is no more nonprofit. Like the whole thing implodes because you implode. It's better, even if in your mind you're like, well, we're not quite at 100%. That's okay. Delegate. And then you shift gears to say, how can I train that person who maybe is at a 75% quality or excellence level and help them get to a 90%, 95, or even 100%, right? That's your job is to delegate and train, not doing everything on your own. Because that's the thing. If you really want to scale an organization and grow it, you can't do everything on the own. Number one, you're not good at everything. And number two, it's just not possible. You only have so much energy, right? And time in the day. So the quicker you realize I need a team to do this with me, the better you're going to have a chance of not burning out because you realize I need a team to lean on for this.
Have you seen that mentality as a common problem in the nonprofit world? The idea that everything has to be 100%, that it needs to be just perfect before you move forward?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think this often you call it founder syndrome, right? Particularly if you're a founder, if you have a passion for something that's very personal and it's very emotional, right? In many ways. So it's hard to separate out your personal attachment to this mission from the mission itself, right? And I think that's where we do run into trouble is nonprofits are often driven by that passion, which is great on the one hand, but if it's so part of you as a person, and you're not able to get beyond you and realize this is well bigger than you. This issue and mission is much bigger than you. That's where people do have a hard time. And I think because the nonprofit world attracts people and even rewards people that are super passionate about a cause, but that also becomes your downfall because you realize, hey, no one has that passion at the same level as I do. Now, you may never say that, but you think that.
Yeah.
So right? And so you're like, they're never going to do it quite as well as I'm just going to keep doing it. So that is so short-sighted though, because number one, you've put a lid on your organization because again, you could only do so much. Very few people, even in the business world, right? Very few people can do anything up to a certain level. If you're going to really scale this and impact as many horses as you want or impact the community the way you want, it can't just be about you. It can't just be you because you can only do so much again. So just reminding yourself it's not about you, it's about the mission. That will help because yes, I think that's a hazard for nonprofits for sure.
What are some strategies that nonprofits could implement today that maybe you see a lot of nonprofits aren't doing? If you did these things, it would really benefit your organization.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So I think, yeah, right away. Okay. It depends where you are. So maybe I'll answer first, like entrepreneurs, if you're really wanting to start something, launch something, or really get your nonprofit off the ground, again, get some help, reach out to some people, even if it's just one or two people. Potentially, if you have the money, again, I think hiring a consultant or a coach really is worth the investment. I use this analogy often. Think about like all of us are into professional, sports, or a lot of people like professional sports, but almost everybody really watched the Olympics and enjoyed watching the Olympics, right? Think about every single Olympic athlete or every professional athlete you see. They don't normally just have one coach. They have more than one coach, typically. Depends because as you get bigger and better, I should say, and more accomplished, you have more people investing in you, realizing you need a lot of different coaches, right? And like I always think of football as a perfect analogy where it's not just the head coach. You have a head coach, you have a defensive coordinator, you have an offensive coordinator, you have a quarterback's coach, you have a receivers coach. Like you have so many coaches, right? So why, if that is so important and people do enjoy watching sports or watching the Olympics, why don't we need coaching, in the nonprofit world or actually business world, of course, they get this already. A lot of businesses do hire coaches all the time, right? But for some reason, the nonprofit world, we almost see it as a luxury or something like, well, I don't know if I really need that. Maybe I'll just wait till I really get this going. I feel like, no, if you really want to get good, everyone needs a coach at some level. I mean, I'm a big believer in that. Obviously, I'm a little biased because that's what I do, but I've just seen the benefit of it. And so that may be the next step particularly if you're listening to this podcast and you're feeling like you're stuck. You just feel like, I know I've been doing everything Rob's telling me, but I just feel stuck a little bit. Reach out and get some help. I think that may be the most practical thing you can do. So that'd be number one. And number two, I think a practical step you can start doing if you're not doing is getting as much research as you can about what you're doing. I found that when you go through the process of really understanding what you're trying to accomplish, learning from other people, it could be learning about the whole nonprofits that use horses or are a part of horse sanctuaries or whatever. There's lots of information out there. It just may be through the process of learning, some light bulbs may turn on for you. You're like, oh, you know what? Of course. Oh, that's what I should do. Or, oh, I didn't know that some people are doing that. Oh, that may be another thing I could do. So just by that, exposing yourself to that learning and hearing more about the industry as a whole may just open up some doors for you and may get you unstuck too. So I think learning, educating yourself, I'm a big believer in that we all, as leaders, going back to leaders, what's a good quality of a leader is someone who's always learning.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best traits of a leader is you stop learning, you stop leading. But if you want to keep leading, then keep learning. Keep learning from other people, learn from other different sectors, learn from different people who have done this well. I think that'll help you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Any big ideas that we've missed that would really help nonprofits?
Maybe the only other thing would be when it comes to having particularly I think you started with how do we get these launched and how do we make sure we have a sustainable plan to keep these moving forward? I think one of the key things would be, again, is being clear on your purpose, being clear with your vision and mission, and being clear with your values. I think that's where probably if you just say the one thing I see the biggest mistake is you don't establish that really clearly. And I think you need all three. You need a mission, a vision, and values. Because you may have a vision, but if you don't have a clear mission of how you're going to accomplish it and values to guide you along the way, you're going to get off track. Maybe you have some values of what you're really about, but you don't have a clear mission. Well, people don't understand what you're about and they won't get excited about it and they won't be able to support you because you can't articulate what is the mission you're trying to accomplish. So I think that if you were to just do one thing today and you get one thing out of this podcast, come up with a very clear mission, vision, and value statement. And then again, the nice thing is there's lots of resources online. You can get help with that, of how you can develop that. And I even know a lot of people are using AI and ChatGPT and whatever AI, especially you're using. Sure. I'm a big believer, come up with something on your own but throw it in there and they may be able to articulate or wordsmith for you a vision value statement or something. If that's something new and you don't know how to do that, AI can be a help to you. Don't rely on AI to create it for you, but it can sharpen it and it can make it better and it can actually make it maybe more expansive than you initially thought. So that may be just something that we haven't really touched on that could be a good thing.
Yeah. Any other advice besides maybe getting feedback, whether that's AI or other people, on how to develop that clarity? Maybe you have a vision of what you see that it could be, but you're not really sure how to get there or how to articulate that or what actually you are trying to accomplish, even though maybe you can see that vision.
Yeah, I think, again, just reaching out and talking to people who've done it well, reach out to them as much as you can, right? Talk to them, ask them, go online again, learn from what these great, and you can actually go into businesses too. There's so many great studies on how great businesses really got off the ground and took off. Apple, there's lots of studies on Apple, of course. You think about your favorite company potentially. But in the nonprofit world, there's lots out there. Listen to podcasts, right? We're obviously on a podcast. There's lots of good podcasts out there that actually talk about this very thing, how to develop this, how to frame your vision and mission well. Listen to people who do this well. That's what's beautiful, I think, about the world we live in now. There is so much information out there. Now, it can be information overload, but there is information out there. So if you're looking for something specific, type it in again to AI or type it into Google, and you'll probably find a video, a podcast, a website that'll help you walk through that. I don't think there's any shortage of resources now that can at least help guide your direction.
Thank you so much for being here, for sharing something that will be super helpful to the people that are listening to it. That really have that passion and want to become involved in some way. And you had a lot of great practical tips, which I love, that people can really take today and go do it. Go find your passion and get started on it and see where it leads. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You can find Rob at his podcast, the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast, or check out his services, including coaching, at robharter.com, or email him at rob@robharter.com. So if you want to get in touch with him, get some more of his wisdom on the nonprofit world, those are great places to find him. Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.